Hello, everybody. I'll just give it another minute or two to allow people to join. Hello, everyone. I'll just give it another minute. Can everybody hear me okay? If you just want to reply in the chat or you can react. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I might begin. First of all, I just want to welcome everybody to the event today. My name is Evan O'Connell, so I'm leading out on the capital project pillar with the PMI this year. We're very excited to have Lidl joining us. Jack Fitzgerald is a senior construction manager with Lidl, and he's going to speak about their net zero project of Maynooth. So Lidl at our PMI awards last year won the Future of Work Excellence Award. We've been very keen to have them on and to give us an overview of the project. So thanks to Jack for coming. Just by way of introduction, Jack, as I said, is a senior construction manager at Lidl. He's a civil engineering graduate from NUI Galway, and he did a postgrad diploma in project management from Trinity. He's progressed through the roles, including design engineer, site engineer, and construction manager, delivering large-scale retail projects across Ireland. So Jack is going to give us a run through of the project. And at the end of Jack's presentation, we're going to have a Q&A. You can drop your questions in the meeting chat and I'll read them out at the end. So thank you, and I'll pass it over to you now, Jack.
Thanks, Evan. Right. Just share my screen here, guys. So you might let me know if you can see it there. Maybe Evan, you might say it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. As Evan said, my name is Jack Fitzgerald. I'm a construction manager. I've been working for Lidl for almost 6 years now at this stage. And the most recent project I was involved in was an exciting first of its kind project in sustainability and construction, our project in Maynooth, Lidl Zero Maynooth. So to give you a bit of background on the project, the objective of the project was to develop the first BREEAM outstanding net zero energy supermarket in Ireland. There was a couple of different parts in this project. So BREEAM outstanding, BREEAM being, I suppose, the top tier of green certification when it comes to construction. It's a tiered system, and we are targeting the highest tier of outstanding. And then the second part being net zero energy. Net zero energy being both in terms of embodied carbon and also operational carbon. So I'll get a bit more into the details of it shortly, but that's, I suppose, as a first step, just what the objective of the project was. Again, how that ties into Lidl's overall sustainability strategy. Our strategy there at the moment is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as close to zero as possible by 2050 and offset non-avoidable emissions to achieve net zero. So there is a business-wide strategy there that we are focused on and working to. And we saw Lidl Zero Maynooth as a test bed that we could use as part of this strategy. We could take the learnings from it and then use them across the wider group. So then the key objectives of the project, I suppose, future-proofing. So future-proofing for, I suppose, future EU legislation there in terms of the Energy Performance Building Directive and, I suppose, the move towards zero energy buildings. We wanted to use Maynooth again as a test bed here, take the learnings from it and be able to be well equipped for these changes when they come further down the line. And so reducing energy consumption and cost. As a discount retailer, energy consumption costs is always something that's at the front of our mind, how we can make those costs leaner, but keep the stores operating as efficiently, I suppose, as well as possible. So we wanted to use Maynooth here. Again, we made updates to building services to see what we could take and roll out across the wider network. Awareness. So awareness is obviously going to be a key objective of this project. This is awareness through the project partners such as the Irish Green Building Council and also the BRE group. So we want to, I suppose, continue to reinforce the Lidl's position as a market retailer when it comes to sustainability. And again, this is going to be done through our project partners here. And then education. Obviously, we wanted to use Maynooth as also like a learning base as well. be that for suppliers, I suppose other contractors, developers, and even the wider public as well, which I'll get into a bit more later on, which we've done through our community garden, which gives you details on the building that you can see as soon as you walk into the site. Okay, so a bit more background then on the project. We started this project in roughly 2020, so almost 6 years ago now. At the time, there was no definition for net zero energy construction in Ireland. There had been a number of definitions over the years through the likes of the World Green Building Council, but these allowed for a very wide range of offsets, including the likes of the purchase of green electricity. So with that in mind, we decided to partner up with the Irish Green Building Council and again get their third-party validation on this and get them to define the scope for us going forward. And the definition that we came to in agreement with them was all operational and embodied carbon and offsets only for embodied carbon must be genuine offsets. So the operational carbon is the carbon to run the building day to day, such as like your refrigeration, your lighting, etc. The embodied carbon then being the carbon produced to realise the source, so through your building materials and methods. Then the offsets. So like I said, there was a wide range of offsets through the likes of the World Green Building Council and other definitions throughout the years. In Maynooth, we wanted to keep the offsets genuine. So what we've done was actually created say carbon insets. So we've retrofitted a store near close to Maynooth with PV as well to offset the remainder of the embodied carbon that we couldn't with the store build. So the structure then, the external team. So again, Lidl Ireland has been the primary driver of this. We were closely, I suppose, affiliated with our own Lidl International and Schwartz Group parent company as well. They're obviously project stakeholders here also. But within, I suppose, the project team directly, we had Irish Green Building Council and the BRE Group as partners in the project, as I mentioned. The project team then as well included sustainability consultants and BDP, architecture and engineers and SDS design group, mechanical and electrical consultants, then Lawler consultant, landscape architects, Austin Landscapes. So then the main contractor and M&E contractor we appointed on the project were McCallan Group and Domain Engineering, who would also be, I suppose, the partners of Lidl for a long time there also and involved in a lot of our standard store rollouts. So again, the project is only as good as the team involved. We knew we had to establish a good team from the top down, a strong team. So we had to get our partnerships done early. We had to get the sustainability consultant on board again to, I suppose, advise us and be able to make some of those decisions as well regarding the energy usage, regarding the embodied carbon that we hadn't done previously in stores to date. And then we had a good body there of framework consultants and contractors that we carry job to job as well to help us deliver this project. So the embodied carbon I'll start off with here. So when we started this project, we obviously had to build a baseline and understand what exactly our embodied carbon benchmark was for a standard store. So we had a life cycle assessment carried out in a standard store. And what we found is that a typical Lidl store was already performing very well in terms of embodied carbon. So I've listed the standards set here by the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standards on the right hand side. The reason I'm referencing these is because, like similar to construction regulations, the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standards, the Irish standards, when they are released, are predicted to follow these very closely for the commercial and retail sectors. So we found that Lidl was already outperforming the 2030 targets there at 535. We were closer to 440 kilograms of CO2. So with the changes we were able to implement in Maynooth, we brought this closer to the 2040 target. So we're within about 320, 330 kilograms of CO2 in Maynooth at the moment. So again, we were able to make a significant decrease there in the embodied carbon of 26%. But again, just shows we're already, I suppose, outperforming the standards that were already set. But again, we want to continue to focus to be better and to reduce this further. So as part of the life cycle analysis, we had to analyse every element of the building structure. So we started off looking at the substructure and I suppose the percentage of the embodied carbon that was taken up in the store, going through the frame, the roof. We were able to pick out, I suppose, some of the bigger hitters there and be able to identify key areas we could go after. So looking at this key element breakdown, so the roof panel that we included in the standard store was a PIR insulation panel. So the manufacturing process for these is very carbon intensive. It includes a couple of sheets of steel to manufacture either side of your PIR insulation. And so we identified that as an area that we could focus in on. So through our suppliers in the project Kingspan, we were able to implement the lower embodied carbon roof panel range. At the time, this wasn't something that had been released to the market. They also wanted to use Lidl as a test bed for themselves. So we got their early buy-in and we were able to see significant savings there of up to 21% in the roof panel and also the wall panels in this case, which were also the same type of panel, a PIR insulated panel. The building structure there, so we had the Portland blocks. So the Portland blocks are a clay block that we use in our standard stores. They're very high insulating qualities. they've quite a low carbon, I suppose, output in comparison to likes of your concrete blocks, likes of steel frame. We did look at all these options to see if there was any change we should make here, but we saw they were already, I suppose, outperforming the standards by using the Portland blocks. So we continue to use them here. What we did do in this case was we increased the thickness of them. So typically we use a 365 mil block. We increased this to 425 mil. The reason being just I suppose, reduce the heat losses through the building, because we want to retain as much energy within the building as we possibly can, so that in turn the building services don't need to work as hard going forward. Working down through it then, some of the other big items that we made changes to were concrete related items. So in a typical store, we use the likes of, say, your precast beams, precast columns. We pour concrete slab as well, your foundations. In Maynooth, we use a 50% GGBS recycled concrete, recycled material concrete. So by doing this, it's recycling obviously concrete from other locations. It's putting it back into the mix. You're reusing it. You're not creating new concrete again straight off the bat. And what we saw was there up to a 48% decrease in the carbon produced by using this 50% GGBS throughout the site. So that was again another significant change we made there. Another one we looked at were the glulam beams. So the glulam beams is something that as a brand we're quite proud of. Again, it's the first thing when you walk into a Lidl store that you see that the competitors don't do. It's not something we really wanted to deviate from, but again, we looked at all the options here. Could we go with a steel frame in this case, a lightweight steel frame? Could we go with precast elements? Would that be something that could reduce the carbon? But again, we found the glulam, it's a glue laminated timber structure. It's already quite low in carbon compared to the various items there. So we decided to retain the structure here also. So then, having looked at the embodied carbon, next up was the operational requirements for the store. So again, similar to the operational strategy, we had to build, similar to the embodied carbon strategy, we had to look at the operational strategy in terms of building your benchmark and working your way down. What improvements can you make? So again, we picked a couple of standard stores, we analysed them, we found that refrigeration was the biggest hitter there in terms of consumption, like the general power, lighting, HVAC, heat and cooling. These are all items then that were looked at to see what we could do to change those in order to make them run more efficiently, and this was reduce the consumption in the store. So through that, we, again, developed this, I suppose, energy waterfall or kind of, I suppose, strategy from it. So we looked at the items, like I said there, that we could reduce the energy store usage from. And we found that we were able to make a reduction only to a certain point. That wasn't going to get you to net zero. And I suppose this is where your renewables then come into effect. So in a standard store, we typically include 200 kilowatt of PV solar panels on the roof. In Maynooth, we've included 575 through the roof and the car park. So we over doubled the size of the PV array here in order to get more solar usage in the store and reduce the energy consumption. We also included a battery in Maynooth, which I suppose it was first of its kind in terms of a retailer to do this in Ireland. It was the first time we'd done it in Ireland throughout our stores also. But again, this was able to make use of the high production times for the PV. It can go to the battery, be stored, and then release through the likes of nighttime, make use of the cheaper nighttime rates in that case also. And then finally, and it was something again that we'd never had experience in having to achieve before, but we found that we could get so far renewables, get so far with reducing the energy consumption, we still needed to be able to export the remainder to the grid, and in that case, for your high peak times. So we had to, I suppose, work with the ESB and the DSO department within ESB in order to obtain an export license. And again, this was really the key element in order to truly get us to net zero, because there was only so far we could get with the building design. So again, it was something we were able to achieve there at our peak times. We're exporting to the grid, and that's allowing us to achieve net zero in this case. So maybe then just to give you some, I suppose, kind of headline facts on it as well. In Maynooth, we've saved what is the equivalent of 40 Irish houses in terms of energy saving annually. And also 142 tonnes of operational carbon have been saved versus our standard store. And again, this is equivalent to 1,500 flights from Ireland to Spain annually. So if you think of the fuel and the cost of fuel there at the moment as well, there's obviously significant savings there. But again, just put a bit into perspective for the everyday customer also. And again, some more headline figures. Embodied carbon, I mentioned earlier, through the change in our building materials and the likes of lower embodied range there from Kingspan, from changing our concrete, we were able to reduce that by 26%. The energy consumption reduced by 30% through changing our refrigeration that we typically put in stores, and through changing the likes of our HVAC, our heat and ventilation cooling systems. The operational expenditure, again, obviously, because due to the likes of the use of the PV solar in this case having increased, the energy consumption reduced, and the operational expenditure has reduced significantly by 82%. But obviously, all this comes at a cost. The Maynooth is a one-off, it's a landmark store. It's, I suppose, what we wanted to be a pilot project that we could, or sorry, not a pilot project, a test bed project that we could take our learnings from. There was a significant capital expenditure investment here of 20%. But again, we knew this coming into the project and we had all these taken into account. We'd done over evaluations based on it. So it was something we were aware of coming into it. It was just a further bit then on BREEAM certification. So I mentioned there third party, I suppose, validation was absolutely crucial to the integrity of this project. So we had the likes of, say, the Irish Green Building Council there that made the definition for us or helped us to define what the scope of the project would be. We also needed BRE group then as well to be able to, I suppose, help us to guide us on how we could achieve BREEAM outstanding certification in this project. So what we've done in this case is we've targeted Maynooth for the outstanding rating, the highest one you can possibly achieve. The reason behind the Maynooth store then and what we were able to choose this is, I suppose, the best one in order to achieve the BREEAM outstanding certification. So it was a knock and rebuild store. It was an old store that was in bad disrepair. The original store opened in the 5th of the 11th, 2005. The new store actually opened almost 20 years after. It was the 6th, 11th, 2025. So we had the store that was in place there for 19 years approximately. So with BREEAM certification, there's a large amount of credits available for the transport section. So with Maynooth, it's a commuter town. It's on the Dublin commuter belt. There's a number of services running through it. You have your trains, you have your buses. That all kind of comes into effect here as well. So because of that, we were able to identify Maynooth as, I suppose, the best candidate in order to achieve BREEAM outstanding and also continue to achieve the net zero. So the commuter belt and public transport links again to close off that. The programme then as well, I suppose what makes this project even more unique again is, I suppose, how aggressive the timeline was in order to achieve all this. So Maynooth's programme was 37 weeks from start to finish. So we started off on the programme started in February and the store started on the 10th of February and it opened on the 6th of November 2025 the same year. But maybe just looking at the programme here, we had some kind of key milestones we were observing throughout the different months. So from March to June, so once the demolition of the old building was complete, circular economy became a key focus then in March. So obviously with the store being an older store and you'd say that we want to make the savings in carbon, and again, you're not an old store there, we did want to put a big focus on the circular economy aspect. What could we take out of the old store that we could put in a new store? What could we donate to local groups? What could we reuse, repurpose, recycle? So that was a key focus for us in March, and I have a slide on it here further on where we get into the initiatives we actually took there, but that was the starting point. The recycled materials then was the next one. So the likes of what I mentioned there around the recycled concrete, that was, again, once that started going into place in June, that was kind of our key focus then for that period. The lower carbon materials then as well, so the likes of your Portland blocks, the glulam timber, also the Kingspan panels, that was then the focus then throughout July and August. So then optimising our building services, so the likes of new refrigeration, the lighting, heat and ventilation, cooling, that became our focus towards the end of August into September. And then that shifted towards renewable energy, so installing the PV, installing the battery system, and then closing out the project and putting the final touches on it. Biodiversity and landscaping, we obviously wanted that to be a big focus in this project also. I'll touch on a bit more there later on. But again, you'll see the likes of the community garden there, the living wall, the green planter boxes on the roof. That was all, I suppose, feeding into our biodiversity targets for this store. And then finally, that resulted in the November 6th opening and trying to achieve the net zero and net zero and opening in November. So a bit more into the energy generation then. So like I mentioned, we include 200 kilowatts of solar PV array on our roofs as standard. What you see there on the roof is approximately 60% of what's actually installed in that photo there. So we increased the roof so that there is no room for any more PV on it, including your walkways and distances from the edges, etc. We found that could only get us so far in terms of actually achieving net zero. So we needed to include further PV. And what we were able to do in Maynooth was include these timber canopies throughout the car park. So you'll see that one there just on the photo on the top. And then the photo on the bottom, you'll see two further ones in the background where my cursor is. This was a piece of ancillary land that we purchased for future development in the store. What we found, and I suppose what we decided early in the project was these, if we were to put car parking spaces down here, they'd be quite far away from the store entrance. So in order to achieve net zero, we said we'd better utilise this as our community garden area and also utilise it to include additional PV, and allowed us to get over 130 kilowatt of PV into that area alone. So again, it was very worthwhile there in order to achieve that net zero. And then energy generation, again, back to battery storage. So like I mentioned, this is the first store that we utilised battery storage on. We had, I suppose, other countries within the Lidl group that were able to lean into and take their expertise on this. Again, take the learnings from other countries, what they've done there. But what we did in Maynooth was we installed a 215 kilowatt hour battery. Like I said, it stores the excess energy generated, and then we're able to use this during the peak times and are also able to participate in demand response schemes. So again, reducing the strain on the grid also at peak times, so we can actually use the energy stored in our battery to go back into the grid there also. So then maybe a bit more on the low carbon materials. So back to maybe a bit around circular economy as well as low carbon materials. The old store in Maynooth, we were able to pick up and remove and retain all of the concrete, be that your pavers, concrete foundations throughout the car park, the footpaths. We were able to retain all of that, and we reused 100% of it in Maynooth. So that was obviously a big one there that we wanted to achieve from the outset. I suppose our contractor, the knock and rebuild program on this would have been a bit longer than what we typically do if it was a knock and rebuild program. The reason being we're segregating all the material, we're ensuring everything was separated, and that we were making use of those circular economy initiatives here. But again, it resulted in us being able to reuse 100% of the material, which was our target on the project. The 50% GGBS concrete, like I mentioned, we can saw savings there of up to 48%. All the structure that you see in the photo below, and then the slab that was eventually poured here also, that was all made using that 50% recycled concrete. So all your columns, your beams, ground slabs, etc. And then the Portland clay blocks. So this is the block in question here. It's a clay block, again, that we use in all of our standard stores. We increase the size of it here in order to reduce the losses through the building, in thermal losses through the building. So circular economy then, I mentioned there obviously about the concrete pavers and that. We also wanted to reuse material that we took from the building that couldn't be reused on the site. So we reached out to local schools, to local charities, initiatives to see what we could potentially, I suppose, get an agreement with them that they would be able to use as well. So the timber structure, as you can see in the old store here on the right hand side, we stripped the timber, kept it on site. We donated it to local schools. So there were 4 schools that we donated garden furniture, insect hotels, bird boxes to, and we made over 20 bird boxes, insect hotels. They went out to the likes of the Maynooth Educate Together School, Leaksville Primary School, all schools in the surrounding areas. The RNLI in Donegal, we took the light poles that were on the existing site and donated them to a marina that was being constructed up there at the time. So again, repurpose and reuse up there. And then this project in particular is quite an interesting one. So the Acre project is just over the road in Selbridge. It's a men's and women's shed. On the site, you see they have the likes of there's vegetable gardens, there's flower gardens, there's likes of these chicken coops here, etc. So what we did was we actually donated 7 tons of topsoil that could be used in the garden areas. We also donated all the old paladine fencing that you see in this photo here. So that green fencing was actually surrounding the old Maynooth site. They took it, they repurposed it, and they made the coops to protect the chickens from foxes and whatnot to try to get into them. Again, low carbon materials, so the glulam beams, like I mentioned, we did review steel structure, precast structure. Was there anything better we could do there? We found that we were already, I suppose, ahead of the standards required with the glulam, so we maintained the structure on this site. The walls and the roof panels, again, by our partner Kingspan, they boasted an 18% lower embodied carbon. And then even towards the end of the project, this was one that we hadn't anticipated or we hadn't taken account for, but it was something that was relatively new on the market at the time. And I suppose because of the traction that the project was getting, how much people knew about what net zero energy in Maynooth was going to become for a finish, our suppliers that provided the tarmac actually reached out to us to say we have this project, product at the moment. So it's a 70% reclaimed asphalt. So the binder layer, so the bottom layer and the middle layer of the tarmac is actually all made using recycled tarmac in this case also. It's only your top layer that's used the fresh tarmac. So again, significant savings in carbon there as well, because to produce tarmac is obviously very carbon intensive. Canopies and trolley bays then as well. So the glulam that you see in the stores, that's also throughout the car park. So these new canopy structures. Again, this wasn't something we'd done before, but it's something you'd see a lot more maybe in Lidl stores on the continent, in warmer countries likes of Spain, France, Italy, Germany. They've all done this before. We were able to maybe lean into their expertise in this case, I suppose use their learnings, and also the suppliers that they use would also work within Ireland also, VHAG in this case. So they were able to, I suppose, provide this solution for us for the car park canopies. And then also one that we decide on, we have an external trolley bay here. In this case, typically a steel structure. We wanted to continue to reinforce that kind of green net zero image when you drive into the store as well, or when you drive into the car park. So one of the first things you see when you drive into the car park is the trolley bay canopy in this case, and it is a timber structure also, the exact same as the canopies. And then even down as far as the fittings around the site, so the bollards. So these bollards are made from recycled plastic. The recycled plastic actually comes from Schwartz Group, our parent company. So these may have come from a Lidl, anywhere in the Lidl group at some stage, been repurposed, made into bollards, and then they ended up in Maynooth. So again, it was when you're buying the final pieces of the store, to be able to include those was a nice element. So then sustainability features. Again, like I said, we want to continue to reinforce the green image, the image of net zero, and we did that through, I suppose, further like sustainability and biodiversity features here also. So the living wall, we installed a living wall in Maynooth. In this case, there's two sections of it. We opened in November, which obviously isn't a great time of year for plants growing, whatever. So this was growing in the greenhouse since the month of May. So that when we came out to site, we actually had like this kind of lush green wall you see in front of you here. Again, to kind of bring it back to the recycling and reuse, it's fed by an irrigation system that's actually linked back to a rainwater harvesting system from the roof. So any water that falls from rain comes into the roof, is collected in a tray, it's been fed back into the green wall and also into the community garden in the next photo. So the community garden, again, we wanted to, I suppose, create an area for biodiversity. So for your insects, your plants, your animals, that they could all, inside in this, we have insect log piles, we have bird boxes, we have insect hotels. There's any number of different features in here, even like down as far as the type of sand we put in, the type of stones we put in. We had a landscape architect on board that was able to advise on the most suitable for these in order for biodiversity to thrive. And again, any number of the native Irish flowers, native Irish hedging as well to be included. Just one there as well, then the sustainable mobility hub. So I mentioned earlier about the credits available for mobility in BREEAM. So not just about your cars, your trains and whatever, we also need to include sustainable mobility initiatives in Maynooth also. So in a standard store, we typically include one charger for two electric vehicle spaces. In Maynooth, we have 6 electric vehicle spaces. We also have these bike and scooter chargers. We have 12 of these pedestals in total. But then we also have the likes of, say, standard bike racks that you have in every store. We also included cargo bike racks for the larger bikes you typically see around the areas now as well. And these were all, I suppose, feeding into our strategy there with BREEAM and achieving maximum credits available to achieve outstanding. Green car parking spaces, again, this was something, I suppose, new and very unique here in what we included in Maynooth. So in the planning conditions, there was a condition around sustainable drainage, which isn't uncommon these days anyway. It's very common site to site across all different councils in the country at this stage. We have done permeable drainage previously. We've done permeable tarmac previously. We wanted to do something different here as well, again, to just really give you that impact when you drive into site around the green image. So again, we're able to lean into, I suppose, expertise there from the other countries like France, Italy, who've done this previously. And we're able to develop this green car parking space. So what it is a paved area surrounded by what we have here. They're almost like individual flower pots within a paving stone. These are all within the car parking space around the perimeter of the site then as well. They form, I suppose, in the main part of the site, they're all feeding into an attenuation tank. And then along the side, they're all feeding into the gullies that are directly in behind them there. You can see a couple of manholes. So it's all linked back to the drainage system within the site. So again, it's just, again, some sustainability initiative I included here as part of that. Along with green wall, we also included these planter boxes on the roof. They're not weeds, they are deliberate. They're there just, again, for that impact when you drive into the store. What they're also said, they're fed by the same rainwater irrigation system I mentioned earlier. And then the timber facade. So the kind of final piece of the store when you drive into the site, we have the green walls, obviously the plants on the roof that I spoke about there. We wanted to look at the cladding as well that wasn't, I suppose, just our standard cladding. We wanted to put in something again to further reinforce that image, like I said. So we looked at the timber cladding here in this case from an Irish supplier. So again, just maybe a couple of credits then that we were given in the lead up to it. Obviously, the Irish Green Building Council were a partner in the project with us, and you can see maybe a testimonial from there as well. And then also we had Minister Darragh O'Brien was there for a sod turning event during the summer, and he was also there again for the opening event. So like I said, the third party validation was crucial for the validity of this project. Again, we had Irish Green Building Council on board from the start. They helped us to drive the ambition, so as drive the objective of the project. But then again, to be able to get, I suppose, governmental buy-in and be able to use this project as well as a test bed for the wider group as well going forward. It was great to get the recognition here in that regard. You can see then just maybe some final photos of the project. So again, the likes here at front facade there, you can see the green wall, all the planter box in the store then as well. So the glue lamp beams, the same glue lamp throughout the car park. Just an aerial shot then showing the car park, the green car parking spaces you can see really standing out here in this case versus your standard spaces. And then just a couple of further shots in throughout the store. And obviously then it's been received well in the media throughout opening. Even there, like Evan mentioned earlier, we were honoured to accept an award there, the PMI Awards earlier in the year. We since won 2 awards, National Property Awards, and were shortlisted in the Irish Construction Excellence Awards in May as well. So it is getting the recognition I think it deserves. It was a very ambitious project. It was a very unique project. It took a lot of, I suppose, effort from a lot of different stakeholders. I was the project manager to finish it, but I was far from the project manager to start it. Changed hands a lot over the years. So enrolled not a long time. There's been a lot of heads involved in it. It is one that we're very proud of, and we're continuing to monitor now for the year ahead. Building it was the easy bit. Keeping it at net zero now is the target, the objective for the year ahead. But what we found is we opened on the 6th of November. We had a bit of a testing out period where we had to get the systems maybe talking to each other. We had the likes of new refrigeration, a new building management system, new heating and cooling. There was a lot of fine tuning and tweaking that we had to get. But since then, and in December, January, February, we've been below our target for net zero energy as well, which is great. The PV then is above the production target as well. So it's on track at the moment. It's just keeping it on track now and monitoring it for the rest of the year. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. If you have any questions, I'll go through here.
Perfect, Jack. Thank you. That was excellent. A really, really good presentation. Very insightful and an incredible project. So well done to you and to all the team at Lidl. We're just going to kick off into a bit of a Q&A section. So if you've got questions, I can see a few of them are coming in already. But if you've got questions, just pop them in the chat and I can read them out. I just want to start off, Jack. What was the key driver behind committing to a net zero BREEAM outstanding project rather than kind of taking that incremental approach or retrofitting stores? You really went for it.
We did. We went for it for sure. I think. Well, look, like I said, we wanted to be a testbed project for the wider group. That was one driver as well. So it's not just Lidl in Ireland; it's Lidl across the brand. It's also Schwartz Group, our parent company. But I suppose even further to that, we do see ourselves as a market leader in retail and sustainability. Over the years, we were the first to the market with rolling out EV chargers. We were first to market rolling out PV. We had the first BER A1 rated store in the country. We've won awards, the SEI awards there over the last number of years, in the large business category as well. So we do see ourselves as an ambitious company in this regard. As part of the net zero journey then, and I suppose not the net zero journey, rather our sustainability journey, we did want to set a truly ambitious target as what our next step in this journey would be. And again, like, it's not going to be something we're rolling out across the whole brand. This isn't the blueprint for Lidl's in Ireland going forward. We want to use this test bed to see what we could, if we've tried 50 things here, if we could take 1 or 2 that we can use across the network. That was the reason behind the landmark pilot, or the landmark project in this case.
That's great. We have a question from Jackie. Did you make the call on all the carbon positive impact key elements up front, or did you identify them as you went along?
A mixture of both, to be honest. There was more. Obviously, we want to get as many of those decisions made as possible at an early stage. Like I said, we only worked a 37-week program when we're on site, so there aren't a lot of decisions that can be made on site. What we did find, though, is that suppliers and subcontractors, etc., they were all coming to the table during the job with different initiatives, with better initiatives. So where we might have had maybe the supplier at the start, we'd specified a product at the start of the job. A supplier may have come to us, say, I'll offer you this at, maybe cost neutral for this project, but I'll offer you 10% savings in carbon. So the heavy lifting was done during the tender stage, during the detailed design stage. We went on for a long period, obviously, before the project. But no, we were open to suggestions throughout the project, and I suppose that's where we're lucky with the contractors and everyone that we work with on a day-to-day basis. They're all well used to working with Lidl at this stage, and they really want to put their best foot forward also.
Perfect, thank you. A question from Ali. Could you please let us know if and when the 20% extra capital expenditure would be covered by the improvements in operational costs? So a comparison of the lifetime cost of a zero and a normal store would be great.
Um, could say so. We looked at the investments on that to say the investment in the uplift of the 20%. We would look at that, the return on that based on the energy consumption, I suppose the reduction in the cost of that, also the demand response scheme, selling back to the grid. So we found it was about 40% less than what than if we'd done the standard store in that case would have been. So we're looking at upwards maybe between 15 and 20 years. I'm going to give you the window, depending on how price will fluctuate with energy over the next couple of years.
Okay, great, thank you. Can you describe the heating system in the building, e.g. air source heat pump feeding a wet heating system or AHU with an onboard DX coil for heating and cooling?
Yeah, we have so there's a split system in the building. We have an AHU that is feeding the sales floor primarily, and then we have the AC cassettes throughout the sales floor in this case. So the AHU is the primary heating and cooling function in this store, and then obviously depending on the set points within the store, that's where your cassettes then will start to play in that factor. And then similarly in the warehouse area, or sorry, not the warehouse, but the welfare area is served by a smaller AHU in this case as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Zoltan asks, I'd like to ask whether you have applied any BIM principles or utilized BIM at an overall project level.
Yeah, I suppose maybe as the project went on, there was a lot of coordination required. I can take the canopies there for one as an example. The canopies were several contractors involved rather than one package. So we had a roofing contractor, we had the main contractor themselves, obviously, we had the solar supplier, we also then had the timber canopy supplier. They were constantly talking between each other, having to overlay drawings, having to work with each other's models as well. At a high level, we would have, I suppose, started out just your kind of base 2D drawings, but as the project developed as well and as there was more coordination required, BIM obviously played a factor between the contractors themselves.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And just on that kind of multi-stakeholder coordination, how did you manage that from a project management level as the project went on?
There was probably three different elements in it. There was the overall take one is the design team, the piece that I kind of showed you there earlier. So design team, which are consultants and contractors and Lidl, that would have been your typical weekly site meetings, say constant calls every day. It's not just a weekly site meeting, but they would be managed as one piece. The second piece then was the internal Lidl team. So we had over 10 departments involved at different stages, over 40 different project managers, the likes of your sales, your supply chain, logistics, business development, all these guys, they all played into it at a different time. We didn't just want it to be a construction and sustainability project. We wanted it to be a Lidl project. So down as far as the artwork inside the store is completely different to what you see in the standard Lidl store. So to manage that, we had a steering group within the company. We met with the project team within that steering group every week, every 2 weeks, and then the steering group was a monthly placeholder then that we all met up and also confirmed what we were doing as part of the next steps. The final one then is probably the wider, like the Lidl International and Schwartz piece. So we're being used as a test bed, say, for the wider group, in particular the refrigeration and the heat and ventilation and cooling. That's a system that they, I suppose, helped us design here that they wanted us to trial. So again, that was more managed at an earlier point of the project to be able to roll that out, to their standard. And it was probably more so maybe monthly kind of catch-ups to that until completion stage and obviously ramped up a bit. So it's kind of working three different teams throughout the project, I would say, but all collectively to the one goal.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Jack, which sustainability measure delivered the biggest impact relative to its cost or complexity?
At the moment, the refrigeration is performing very well. So in a typical store, we would have open refrigeration. So when you go in, we don't have our doors and refrigeration. You'll notice then obviously the heating system's having to work that bit harder to keep the store at temperature. So in Maynooth, we actually included a new range from AHT Group in this case, or AHT. It was again a trial project with our Lidl International partners. It has doors and refrigeration, but it's also like their new line of energy efficient refrigeration as well. So obviously versus our standard stores, there's almost been a 30% drop in the energy consumption of refrigeration so far, which is great. Obviously, it was the one like I showed there at the start of the presentation. It was a 55% consumer of consumption as it was, or sorry, a 55% factor of the consumption as it was. So that's been, I suppose, the biggest return so far. The PV's been significant in terms of its output compared to the standard store, but the investment cost of that compared to I suppose, what we put into the standard store maybe outweighs the impact refrigeration has had.
Okay, great, thank you. How scalable do you see Little Zero being across your wider portfolio? Like will this kind of set a precedent for the future?
No, it's not intended to. It's intended to be a landmark one-off project. We do have our standard specification stores that we try to build, the store town to town, village to village. What we want to do is take the few learnings, like the easy wins from this project. Can we take that refrigeration and put it across every store? Can we take the heat and ventilation cooling system and put it across every store? We're not going rolling out canopies and we're not going to do biodiversity gardens to that extent in every store going forward. We want to take the small wins from this one.
Yeah, makes sense. And what was the most difficult challenge, would you say, delivering operational and embodied carbon reductions?
In terms of in terms of embodied carbon, it was probably buy-in from suppliers and buy-in, I suppose, from your contractors as well at an early stage. Obviously, the project's been going on a few years. There's been changes in the market over the last few years as well, but I suppose this net zero is maybe relatively new to some of the some of the contractors that we use here. So to be able to get them to go out to the market, to be able to provide us with alternative solutions, that was challenging at the start of the project, but again, paid dividends at the end of it. In terms of the operational then, in order to get to the net zero for the operational was, I suppose the key factor of that really was the export license. And the way it works with the export license in Ireland at the moment is they're done in 2-year intervals. In Maynooth, I suppose the first thing is we had to make sure that our store opening was falling within that period, and it was, thankfully. But you're not guaranteed that if you fall within that period, you'll get an export license. If there was a data centre being built in Maynooth at the time looking for one, well, Lidl mightn't have got as lucky. But so again, it's just really pushing, I suppose, relationships there with like DSB, with DSO as well. So it's trying to get as much buy-in as possible from them also, and trying to partner up with them as much as possible. This project was key to actually getting the operational down to net zero.
Thank you. A question from Ashwin. From a PMO perspective, are there specific digital platforms or tools being utilized to enhance project visibility and governance?
Um, could you repeat that there, sorry, please?
Yeah, from a PMO perspective, are there any specific digital platforms or digital tools being utilized to enhance project visibility or governance?
Say from a building point of view or well, maybe I'll just say, so within, I suppose, the building point of view, like the contractors have their own platforms that are becoming more and more common there at the moment, like Procore or whatever, which I think gives, great visibility to the whole design team there, to all the contractors buying in. That was one as well that I suppose was key in Maynooth. Within Lidl itself, not so much. I suppose we had regular, like I said, the regular meetings we're using your kind of standard office tools, whatever. That was the easiest way of communicating. When the project's moving at pace as well, obviously you're looking to stick to what you know there too. And we delivered it, I suppose, through our presentations, through our spreadsheets, timelines, etc. So contractors, yes, more so. Maybe there was new things implemented in Maynooth, but not so much from internally.
Thank you. And how are you tracking the kind of operational performance post opening? How does that work?
So we have tools, a tool called GLT that we use, and it's our energy management platform. So I suppose I'm checking in on it nearly daily at this stage to make sure everything's all right. So we're using that. That shows you your consumption. It gives you meters throughout the building, so I can check on refrigeration, I can check on lighting, you can isolate areas. That's obviously going to be key to monitoring it day to day going forward. And similar enough then with the PV, we have a similar platform we use for PV as well. We can see that it's tracking where it should be for this time of year, given the daylight that we have. So really, it's just working the two of them off each other now for the year ahead. Again, trying to see if there are any nuances there that we can, I suppose, make any adjustments needed to the specifications or to the set points, whatever in the store.
Okay, very good. You obviously have a very good relationship with Kingspan, as you referenced there earlier. And how challenging was it to source low carbon materials and ensure your suppliers were also aligned with what you were doing?
It depending on the product, really. I suppose some ranges have some more further along than others. I think Kingspan were Kingspan were well down the line that they had a product that was ready to hit the market. They wanted to use us as the pilot for this project as well, which was great. So we were able to get buy-in from them there as well. Again, like I said, there, the tarmac. Tarmac wasn't one that was being done at the start of the project or had been done during tender or design stage. But literally 2 weeks before we started tarmac, and somebody came to the table to say they had a product for us. I think a lot of that came from we had a very robust communication, I suppose, plan for the store as well. We were sending out monthly updates on LinkedIn, touching on those different topics I showed in the program earlier. I suppose this got interest in the store through, like, they were reaching 13, 14,000 people, every time you post on LinkedIn through Lidl's page. Like, there could have been a supplier there that hadn't heard of it at the start of the project that saw it on LinkedIn, was reaching out to extend in term. So, like, the comms plan was huge in order to keep generating interest and keep generating, I suppose, ideas coming in from the likes of the guys there at the tarmac at the end, Mitchell McAdam.
Very good. And in terms of what advice would you give to other organizations who are embarking on this journey of net zero, or what lessons learned jump out at you?
I think that really building the benchmark is the first and most important thing. Getting an evaluation of where you're at versus where you need to be. There's no point in just going ho for it, and then you only find out at the end that you hadn't, I suppose, planned appropriately. So we were lucky in this case that we had quite a good starting point for, like, embodied carbon there. Like I said, they were able to reduce it, but without a sufficient plan at the start, it wouldn't have been achievable.
Perfect, thank you. I'll just go back to one more in the chat. Are the glulam canopies in the car park bespoke, or are they available on the market?
They're bespoke. So we worked, like I said, we were able to lean into design there from likes of Italy and Germany, and I could reach out to a construction manager there from Lidl Germany, and he was able to provide me with drawings from something that was built 2 or 3 years ago. But again, because they actually worked with the same suppliers in that case, it worked well in our favour as well. So it's not something that's directly available on the market, but we were able to kind of, I suppose, tease out the design with our colleagues on it.
Okay, great, thank you. Conscious that there's probably people on the call who are maybe early career project managers looking to embark on a career potentially with Lidl. Just in terms of careers then, what skills or experience do you look for in project managers or construction professionals when they're joining Lidl?
I think, look, I suppose over time you'll find out, like, communication is key to the success of any project there as well. I suppose being able to pick up the phone to your suppliers, your contractors, your wider design team, and not leaving it in the hands of, I suppose, everyone else in order to get it done. So a real, I suppose, an eagerness to get stuck in as well is obviously a big thing here with how aggressive our timelines are. Retail is very much, I suppose, a higher pace than what a lot of maybe the construction industry might be at times as well. So I suppose having that bit of aggressiveness that you need in order to get stuck into the projects too is a big thing here.
Absolutely, it's great advice. And Jack, what's the typical kind of career progression like for someone when they join Lidl through the kind of construction or capital project teams?
Yeah, so in our construction team at the moment, we operate quite leanly. So we have, you can just take, for instance, if you were to come in the construction graduate program, I suppose the objective or the goal for you at the end of that program is that you then be hired as a construction project manager. Within the team, then we also next level being senior managers, and then up as far as director. So that's your kind of typical kind of within the head office team. We are a support function for 4 regional teams also, that all of their own property offices within the regions also. So we have Charleville, Mullingar, Newbridge and Nuts Corner there near Belfast. So within those you have your acquisition managers, you have your construction managers as well. So we're, again, like I said, quite lean for how we operate, but that's your kind of typical career path there.
Brilliant. Yeah, and like just from myself being on calls with you guys and organising this event, you've got a really, really good system operating Lidl. It looks like a fantastic place to work. So if anybody in the chat or on the call is interested in a career with Lidl, just keep an eye out on their various social media platforms. It's coming up on 10 to 2, guys, so I'm going to put an end to the call now. A huge thank you to Jack and his colleagues at Lidl. It's a fantastic project, very, very insightful, and you deserve all the praise you're getting in the media. So thanks to everyone that joined. There is a PDU code in the chat for any PMI members. I'm going to copy and paste that into the chat again, just so you have it. But other than that, guys, we'll leave it there. Huge thank you to Jack and all his colleagues at Lidl. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Bye, guys.
Thanks very much.